that what's good, these wigs getting split. Man better breathe and sprint, it's long if I choose to bite down on these pricks. X is a lyrical 4-4 and this, so make sure it's X that you wanna rally with. Oh, make a big man turn to a kid. Shout out skull when I splat out wigs. Never seeing X's with your eyes closed, don't move past girls behind your eyelid. Bars and flows, check out their mixture. Tell them man can't handle the fixture. It's all funny games to the person saying it's all funny games. Get beat up and cocked out the picture. Must be yaps if you think you can wig me. I'll tell my man put down the liquor.
Since I've been shooting scope carbine, the #1 comment that I've seen in almost all of my videos is, why not go to a 4-16? When are you gonna get a 4-16? Where's the 4-16? Well, I finally got one, and I've been getting used to it over the past few months, and it has quickly become my gold standard for optics in terms of scope carbine. Keep in mind that the gold standard for me may differ for you. This is based off of my goals, my wants, my needs. You may have a different optic that better suits your goals, your needs, your wants, and that's fine. That's great, that's amazing. And I'm not knocking that. I just wanna clarify that before all the angry comments start rolling in about your favorite optic. Two things I did have to get used to when I started using the Atacr 4-16 was parallax adjustment and zero stop. Now these weren't negative things, they were just features that I wasn't used to having on the LPVO. So if you've been following for any amount of time, you know I've been shooting predominantly the Atacr 1-8 and don't have parallax adjustment, don't have zero stop. So those were two things I had to get used to. The parallax adjustment has been phenomenal, especially in the Mirage we have here in Texas. Now it is great, obviously, to clarify your target and your image to be able to clearly see what it is you're shooting or positively ID, but more so here in Texas, we have crazy Mirage, just like down in Florida, and sometimes during the year out in Arizona or out west. So if you deal with a lot of Mirage, that's been super nice to have that, because not just for the target, but being able to see misses and self-spot and make good corrections. So with the LPVO, I couldn't necessarily see exactly where it missed if I was off due to wind. And now I'm able to see that and make a good correction and have a faster follow-up shot, a more accurate follow-up shot, which has been great for me, and I've really enjoyed that. The other thing is with the zero stop, it's just been nice to not have to worry about remembering where I was in the rotations. If I just forget after a string of fire or get distracted because we're doing something else, I can just quickly reset it to 0 and then dial for whatever target I need to be on and then go from there. Before we dive into why I consider this my gold standard, I feel like it's worth noting what I'm looking for, what my context is, what my goals are, what I'm intending to do, and then that will set the groundwork for why I love this optic so much. I wanna be able to identify and shoot high contrast targets out to 1,000 yards, and to be able to find hidden targets 800 yards and in. I wanna be able to self-spot. I still wanna be able to shoot 100 yards and in with a decent level of performance. I want an optic that I can set and forget in terms of reliability and durability, and I still want the ability to be able to shoot with night vision or thermals if I choose to do that. So what has made this the gold standard for me? The first thing is glass quality. Now there's a few factors or a few attributes that go into glass quality and ultimately what I think makes the glass quality what it is. And the #1 is gonna be sharpness. So when we talk about sharpness, I wanna talk about it in terms of photography. So when you look at an image that is sharp in terms of photography, we're looking at lines. How much of it is in focus? Are those lines clean? Are they sharp? Are they all in focus, or are they a little soft? Are they a little blurry? Does it start to have some fall off? That's what we're looking at. In terms of scopes, the reason we need sharpness is because it gives us good, clear lines that define objects. So if you're looking at a target, if you're looking for an animal, if you're trying to burn through shadows and see a hidden target, or you're trying to positively ID something, then you need those good clean lines because it's gonna help you give you that outline. If it's a little bit fuzzy, a little bit blurry, it's gonna start to roll off and fade a little bit. It's gonna be really hard to define that. And we saw this a little bit at Ridgeline when they had their hidden targets in the woods and they spray paint them, and it was raining and it was foggy. And so it's like, is it a target? Is it not? And you could see where guys had an issue with that. They struggled if they didn't have as good of glass quality or sharpness. The second thing is going to be glass clarity. Now we tend to confuse these two. When people talk about images, they tend to confuse clarity and sharpness. They're not necessarily the same thing. They do kind of aid in helping each other, but clarity, if you take an image and you put it in Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever photo editing app you want, and you bump up the clarity, ultimately what you're doing is giving more contrast to the image. You're gonna get more rich shadows, and then you're gonna start to brighten up those highlights a little bit. Ultimately what that's doing is it's giving contrast in the image, so that way you can better define subjects. Again, just like we have sharpness with those outlines that helps us see the object better, contrast does the same thing, but it does it with light and shadow. So the more contrast you have in an image, the more rich those shadows are, the brighter the highlights are, the better contrast you're gonna get, especially if you have something that's hidden in the shadows and it has a little bit more light on it than something else, it's gonna pop out off of that background. So you're gonna see it better. So it's just gonna help you see things cleaner. It's gonna give you a better image quality. The third thing is chromatic aberration. So chromatic aberration is ultimately the colors of light and how they mesh together. Are they all seeing this or being projected in the same way? And if you have chromatic aberration, what's happening is the colors are starting to separate a little bit. We see this a lot around greens. So you'll get this like green or magenta color shift, and you kind of get this ghosting around leaves or maybe like a hard edge or a hard line, and you'll see that there. And I haven't noticed that with the Atacr line, so they do a great job of limiting or eliminating the chromatic aberration. In some lower quality glass, you will see chromatic aberration, and the reason that matters is because it makes the image look fuzzy. It makes it look less sharp, and it starts to reduce some of that contrast, which makes the image quality go down. It makes it harder to identify things that may be hidden or things that are smaller. So while you may have more magnification, you're not taking advantage of that magnification because you're not getting as good of image quality. So the Atacr does a great job with sharpness, with clarity, and chromatic aberration. And then the fourth part of this is going to be image distortion. With the Atacr, they do a really good job of that. With scopes, you'll notice, scopes and spotting scopes, you'll notice the center of your image is always going to be the sharpest, the cleanest. It's going to be the best image quality, dead center. As you start to work out from the center of the image and start to get closer to the edges, you're going to start to get more distortion. That's where the images are going to start to fall apart, especially on lower quality optics. Now with the Nightforce, again, we're not seeing those same problems. You get really far to the edges before you start to even notice anything. And for me, it honestly hasn't been noticeable even at max magnification. So all those combined together lead to an amazing image quality coming out of this Atacr 4-16. Now the second attribute that makes it the gold standard for me is going to be the Erector size. I know there's gonna be a bunch of jokes in the comment about that, but it is that. Essentially, the Erector system is what houses your reticle. It controls your windage, so your elevation and your windage adjustments, and it also controls your magnification. So the larger your Erector, the more you're straining the optic, the more work it's requiring it to do. This is why LPVOs struggle, because they have very large Erectors. So a 1 to 10 has a 10 times Erector. A 1 to 8 has an 8 times Erector. When you go to something like a 2 to 10, it only has a 5 times Erector. And that's why LPVOs struggle to a degree, because you have such a large Erector size. You're asking the optic to do a whole lot on both ends, and that's why lower quality optics really struggle on the low end and struggle on the high end as well. Additionally, this is why the best LPVOs cost so much, because it takes a lot of work, a lot of engineering, and high quality components to be able to make both ends of those work really well. So the smaller you make that Erector, the better performance you're gonna have throughout the magnification range. Now the 4-16 only has a 4 times Erector, so you're really not stretching the performance of the optic. And what that means is that you have the potential to have good quality performance and optical image across the range, across the magnification at 4 power and at 16 power. And we do see that in the optic. So I think that contributes to why the image quality is so good. And you have a usable range, a very usable range. You know, some guys will say, well, if you have an optic, you only get like 60% of that range or 50% of that range. I think with the 4-16, you have the entire range you can use. The third attribute for me that makes it my gold standard is going to be the optimal magnification range. So there's big debate right now about kind of like what is the best magnification range for scope carbine. And I've been shooting a 1 to 8 for a while. A lot of guys are pushing 2 to 10s. There's the 3.5 to 18, then you have the 4 to 16, and then some guys are using 5 to 25s, or maybe a 2 to 20, somewhere in that range. And everybody kind of has their own formula. But again, based on my goals, the things that I stated earlier, and the things that I want to achieve, things I want to do, the 4 to 16 is the sweet spot for me. Because I think anything less than the 4, that 3 to 4 range, I really don't need to use if I have a top dot. And I'm running this with a top dot. That's how I have the LPVO set up. So top dot for me eliminates the need for that 1 power, 2 power. I just don't need that. So jumping straight up to the 4 power, and it is still wide enough that the field of view at 4 power is still wide enough that I can see and I can find targets if I'm searching, looking for targets, and I can see what's going on in the range. So if I'm trying to spot environmentals and see what the wind is doing at different distances, I can see that at the 4 power. If I need to crank in and burn through shadows, if I'm looking into a car or into a building or targets are hidden behind trees, things like that, I can see that on the 16 power. And I can see out to 1,000 yards pretty clearly. And so I was actually very impressed with, even with Mirage, how clear I could see targets at that distance. And that ultimately means that I can self-spot. With the glass clarity and the magnification, those two together make it possible for me to self-spot. Again, like I said earlier, being able to make those wind calls, wind corrections, seeing exactly where my miss went, and then making a correction. With the 1 to 8, I kind of have to guess a little bit because I don't have that parallax adjustment and I don't have the magnification. So it limits me at the distances that I can make those corrections and make good corrections. I also think for me, because I've spent so much time shooting the 1 to 8, that I don't feel I need more magnification than the 16. And that's just a me thing because I've shot that for so long that shooting 16 power seems like way more magnification than I've been used to. Now I know there's probably gonna be some people that ask why top dot versus offset dot. And it's just because I have so many reps shooting top dot with the 1:8 that the presentation is the same if I put it on the 4:16. I've also found that the top dot is more useful for me in a variety of situations versus just having the offset dot. I can use it when I'm looking for targets and then drop in, and also when we're in weird positions. So if like we have like a weird thing where we got to cant the gun, it's easier for me to use the top dot, whether I rotate the gun to the left or to the right, versus the offset dot. I'm very limited in the range that I feel like I can use it. And that's probably just a training thing, but for me, top dot's the way to go. The fourth thing that makes it my gold standard is going to be the reticle. Now, reticles are very much based off of preference and largely based off of whatever instructors you like to listen to. There are certain instructors that swear by trimmers or swear by whatever reticle, and you've got to only run that reticle, and that's cool. That's their jam. I like that the Atacr line gives you options. For me, my favorite is the Mil XT. That's what I have in this optic. And for me, there's a few things that I love about it, but one of the things is that it was a easy transition over from the FC DMX that comes in the Atacr 1:8. So it's really simple for me to jump back and forth between those reticles and not feel like I'm lost or having to adjust to it. The other things that I like about it is it has a really fine center dot. That's one thing I love, especially if you're shooting small targets at distance. These guns, these gas guns are becoming more and more precise, becoming more and more accurate. We're able to push them further and further and push the accuracy of them more and more. So having a reticle that allows you to take advantage of that is really important. I don't like reticles that have really big center dots because I don't feel like you can shoot as small with them. It obstructs too much of the target. And that's just a personal thing, again, preference, but that's something that I love about this Mil XT reticle is that really fine center dot. I also like the 0.2 mil holds, whether that's for elevation or wind. It allows you to make quick adjustments if you're holding for wind or elevation and be able to see those things in the reticle very clearly without it obstructing too much of the picture or the image or the target. So the reticle gives you a lot of information. It gives you the information you need, but it doesn't cover up so much of it that you feel distracted by it. So pairing that reticle with the zero stop makes it super easy. So if you want to dial for a target or if you want to hold or a combination of both like many of us do in matches, this is a great combo, and that's one thing I love about it. It ultimately aids in you getting fast and accurate hits. So love that reticle, love the setup and combo with the zero stop. Now, the fifth and final attribute that makes it my gold standard is going to be durability. All these features are basically useless if you can't trust the optic. If you drop it, if it gets banged around in a box because you're flying to a match, if it's sitting in a squad car, whatever it is, if you can't trust that that optic is going to be durable and reliable every time you take it out to use it, then it's all pointless and you've wasted your money. The thing I love about this optic and the entire Atacr lineup is how durable they are. So I'm not necessarily kind on my guns, but I also don't intentionally beat them up. Like I'm not dragging them around behind a truck or throwing them off a roof or any of those things, but they do get banged around. You know, they sit in cases, we fly places, and in the cases, they get banged around. TSA opens them up and throws all your stuff back in there, so stuff's banging against it. You know, when we're at matches and you're banging off a barricade or like ladders, you hit your optic on it all the time. It just gives me peace of mind knowing that the investment you've put into this quality optic is going to stand up over time, that you're not going to have to worry about it. You can kind of set it and forget it. You're not going to have to be wondering, you know, is there something wrong with my optic? Why is the reticle spinning inside? Why did this break on it? Why are my turrets just spinning around? You're not gonna have to worry about that. And that's something that I appreciate about the Atacr line. If you see my 1:8, you know it's all scratched up and beat up. I'm sure this one will end up the same way, but it's nice to have that peace of mind to not have to worry about optics. And that is something that is great about the Atacr line. Now, I do want to make a quick note because I do get the question a lot about the NX8 versus the Atacr. And that is the big difference, is the durability. Ultimately, the Atacrs are just built like tanks. Now, quick little bonus item. This is not something that moves the needle for me, but I feel like it's worth noting because it may move the needle for you. And that is that the reticle is illuminated in the 4-16. You have this option with the 4-16. You don't have to use it. But in some other optics that are comparable or in the same kind of range as the Atacr don't have that option. So that may be something that you need. That may be a feature that you really want, that you really like. So that may move the needle for you if you are looking at this or comparing it to something else. Now, I feel like it's worth noting there are a couple potential deal breakers for you. So talking with a couple of my buddies who have Atacrs, who have 4-16s, exact same optics, same reticle, they have noted things that maybe have pushed them to want to try something else, or the things they don't necessarily like about it. And those two things are the weight and the size of it. Now, for me, that's not a deal breaker. I've never thought about the weight being an issue, and I've also never thought about the size of it being an issue, but for you, it might be. And that's why they are looking for optics that maybe are a little bit shorter, maybe don't take up as much space because of their goals. So maybe that's something that you will have to keep in mind. Maybe you're one of those people who's worried about the weight of it or worried about the length of the optic. But ultimately, there is no perfect optic. You're gonna have trade-offs somewhere, whether that's price, whether that's glass clarity, sharpness, illumination, some of the other features, there's gonna be a trade-off somewhere. So you've got to decide for yourself, what are your goals? What's most important to you? What are the features that are absolute and what are the ones that you can kind of deal with the trade-offs? And for me, weight and length of it are trade-offs I'm willing to live with. For everything else I get, I don't even think about those two things. So, but I felt like it's worth noting because some of you might be like them and want something a little bit smaller. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Those are my thoughts on the Atacr 4-16. If there's something you feel like I left out, if there's questions you have about it or anything else, leave it in the comments down below. More videos coming on it as I use it with iRace Thermal and some night vision stuff. We'll show you that in the future. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. Karate chop that bell so you get notified every time I upload a video, and I will see you guys in the next one.